Have fun, y'all. And if you want, you can turn it off. I'll probably be back up here at like later, but you can. I trust you. Like, click the stop button. Like,
Okay.
just don't like peruse through like all my secret TFC crap or whatever.
Alright, I'm gonna download the entire thing.
It's such a funny thing, he did not complete a grammatical sentence the entire time he was in this room.
We have a copy of that one I see you.
Yes.
It's around 72 minutes. Jack Young is involved beyond the complete. You're not reading anything either? No. Okay. I feel like we should get at least 30 minutes per round. I mean, we had all last night, but I'm too burnt out to do work, so, you know. Or it'll be fun. We all want that still fun. Is the police news they read into? Sure. Just get some in. Okay. What place is it? Just continue to go around. What brings you in? Yeah. Cards out.
Hey y'all, my email is wwilson@usn.org.
And this cast to bio D Google group did not work.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's not working.
Wow. Should we about that one? Something Google's no crooked. Yeah. Take it off and put it to yeah.
It's so sad. Email chain labeled
hate that.
Was Saxon like bad?
Apparently Jack will be fine, it's just like rugby concussion.
What happened? I heard he like rolled his car.
No, he was like pulling out of, I think, driveway, and then somebody rear-ended or ran into him.
His car flipped over, right?
It didn't, I don't think it went all the way over, it was like a 90-degree rotation, but it was still like really bad.
Just like, how do you do that?
It should be set.
It's not either.
It is.
June. This is not what I see.
There's another email coming. I just made that one because I didn't know what the one AC was yet.
I'm trying to send it out. Let me see.
Page.
One second here, sorry. Yeah, like a random email that was someone's trying to log into your Microsoft account or like whatever, and apparently like there's been 18 different login attempts, like Bulgaria and like China today, so like I figured it'd be a good idea to like make my password a lot stronger than like a general word.
Is that running good?
And I don't
Oh,
have,
it's like, baby.
I do not have your speech doc.
Max, I didn't put you on. That's right. Thought I did. Maybe I put shots on.
You know, that's certainly a new strategy I haven't seen before.
It should be sent to you now too.
I remember that when I'm making speaker points at the end of the round, that Julian intentionally forgot to put them in there. I still don't have it, give me a second.
Can you get your laptop moving?
Oh, yeah.
You
I'm not moving it.
you should have dropped.
Are you good? In Westminster, you all are good? Yeah.
I finally got it.
Am I good to go?
Advantage one is water bonus is in legal limbo, creating mass regulatory uncertainty and inevitable. SCOTUS ruling with this, you will have every disaster kind of. No, just having a jurisdiction, no seat, or render conflict, or flexibility, regulatory relations, or the EV, or we call it. And the pre-2050 direction to consider change to that is like more than 16 million treaty 24 that's word creating country for the rest of the second EP, more than I sort of second members, his for determining what is, and the court of every state of independence and interest, and the point of the president decision for this board of energy government and current moving ever, and the permanent face uncertainty regarding the CWA that pre-2052 was exhausted with litigation and gutting enforcement and protection of wetlands and ephemeral streams. A new rule would increase business certainty and save costs and stop statusm. And 14, the EPS first started first after the cases such as restricted political and wetland agencies. And the first time agency time, and the money is still lost daily increases for rule of information in the US, and the constant and the unpredictable efficiency state that business of bringing water put it, and the economy, and economic disaster military will never 20% wetlands are still water. Money's are protected. The brink is now delays, devastating wetlands, no aquatic biody and cause algal bloom. Those are not all nine shoot loss protection for water, cause harm to the pollution flood, loss of water ecosystem agency for cascading polluted and agency politically category water, and that is water, and the pollution is algal bloom, the social contamination pollution, and then sedimental water wetlands are adopting protective definition help with risk. Protecting wetlands is key to solve and then adapt to warming because they're ineffective land carbon sequester work. Not all 19 wetlands are supported and the carbon sequestration accuracy of claims to be active in marriages. Existing natural wetlands, wetland protecting ecosystems of the highest, this one is the Dorado, and responding practice service and adapting, documentation, wetlands, safeguarding wetland, human disturbance, wetland beginning, due to the short of atmosphere, short of with people US, wetlands are high sea size wetland, cause high sea loss, unchecked warming, cause extinction beard, 21 climate has potential with responsibility, aerosol, loss by change of the ocean, causing sea rise, increasing extreme events, even human illness, and these people catastrophe occur, rapidly simultaneously causing devoted trigger feeble climate, contributes to some rate of where global warming is developed efficiently apply, necessary complex interdependent system of likely failure because global collapse reinforcing moves death, describe the global system death spiral, expanding load solves pollution, Hague, and 19. Conservative and pollution, the triviality practice, special override, modifying accepting, the water invested including water in the state of and instead of volunteer adoption, leadership, management, travel back to state of state road, root instead of continue those practices, protecting is model globally. First of all, that's when you put percent of global you have regulation out, experience and expertise, global influence, Pacific, Latin America, notice, and then if you have the international expertise, relation to engagement, and then it's partnership, relationship, capability, and then international respect, thus the plain and nice federation, reinstate clean water, definition of waters of the United States on the grounds the agencies failed to consider relevant scientific evidence when adopting the repeal rule advantage to is the APA, the new ruling, explicitly avoided questions around it. Purple, the 99 courts did not really consider being worded arbitration based according to motion for some others. No pretty funny, the order of the APA, the repeal rule violated the APA and demands judicial reinstatement of the clean water rule justly. The 20 repeal arbitration with the country science agency failed to consider the effects of the protected water security violation of the APA violates the APA and spills over to other the statute if it's allowed to stand. Kaiser, the 20 on common APA organization and because the about the administration, nothing to the federal, niggas that we have, looking for the federal government, agency, basic tennis, the medical, peer reviewed guidelines, the president federal working in the EPA's APA violations as a precedent undermines scientific and predictable rulemaking, broadly independently causes democracy. The 70 laws make democracy version of the APA says there, the nations out of democracy, agencies, the reason decision making sooner, as a citizenship law requires the APA regulatory and the concept flex rigor basis rationales, implication for dimensional law, and the principle necessity for rulemaking. The politicization of science undermines agency rulemaking and policy spills over to science broadly and undermines democratic governance. 18. Science is realism, politicization of science undermines the basic legitimate policy of the agency captures such a redistribution space data information was needs to show political for the scientists hesitate to work with the country the efforts to suppress finding the relations that they've been supporting violated norms from a certain animation state the courts of relative order reason to be one agencies ignore science action is yet to version so that over sanitation is making one as well as democratic government democratic backsliding the US spills over the 21 global democratic recession morphed into the third reverse with country made democracy then the transition is compared to going into very democracy global consequences of the group the champion democracy solves extinction 21 the best antidote to republican terrorism application like intermittent institution of Western Virginia autocratic zone of dictatorship democracy to find each other extremism produce conflict democracy our better party fighting terrorism the society can detect that will help solve pressing problems including climate change science-based agency expertise is key the regulator emerging tech we're all 19 we want to consider consequent expertise for public degradation, the climate, the change of survival, the situation control of technology, energy, attack the the numerous features of the sort of human species, the girl lost its expertise in government agency, we're going to load action one, the control innovation agency for high standard expertise, scientific expert, the governance, those are disease, geoengineering, AI, lacking regulation, ensures existential rights, and then 14 tech, under present risk of the environmental human, the ability to also accommodate the capabilities of subject of regulatory regulatory unlike the the 1,400 meters survival like the expanding technical respiratory the responsibility pathogens for the single terrorists deploy AI existential control cause problems and that outweighs and circumvents their defense years 20 such a risk from losing control of their data take AI could possess general intelligence frequently manipulator determine human authority alone institution presumed like one the surveillance would be the default and politicization and agency science for decisions regulatory certainty but judicial deference on McGullin so 14 be seen it was accountability with the administration government to consider is the science of remedy regulation of the one we made there public life regulation of investment cost to do from and to how industry make new investment you decided to send cost benefit for right in for regulations on future rules developers questions and core different agency to cooperate if and uncertainty rights department industry home and 11 compact and articles that are related to investigation to never is not just by person expensive investment creating Mr. Psycho investment compact no less than high level survey master disadvantage the short high risk investment and revenue food company with competence and high gamble and dropout and produce environment. This investment in preservation pharma innovations are key to solve disease, bioterror threats, and ABR investment incentives came are the 20 key actor pharmaceutical company development medicine vaccine expertise, there is an infrastructure companies indispensable need to study innovation, that's including disease markers and antimicrobial and the need of innovation, and U.S. innovation is key to global access to all the global by forming leadership policies under global policy, and facilitate research of blood distributed around the world, and for access to such a global, and trying to continue bringing that innovation in the world. Disease causing extinction, future diseases will be worse, and preparing to solve commodities. Unfortunately, COVID taught us about the danger of continuing lethal disease. The future humans got microbial devices, disease resulting extinction, preventive measures for delay outcomes, vulnerabilities, and preparedness were because of a lack of investment. Navalny and 20 hope reflect fair system, new durable industry, meaningful investment in research domain, clear warning, and industry to sustain vaccine defense, and preparedness has been a priority. The alignment of judicial review solves cost benefit assessment, increase the balance mechanism for certainty as well. And see. In the repeal of the water rule, EPA considers treatment cost of benefit to regenerate early CBA stimulus, regulatory policy, ACBA considering regulation grounded analysis, come in the bind signs of the policy more difficult to the CBA agency go automatic and image review policy by enjoying the sufficing power to two differential agents at a higher parties position like reverse CBA active commitment to the current agent and the standard review CBA business committee to student area specification balance in response to disability predicting what effect guard changes speed and accuracy response during the emergency situation be procedural and we're making CBA is not constrained equity actually needed has to be sticky only when reason policy should be in. The plan creates a default science presumption in judicial review that checks motive reasoning. Russell in the 19 a war on science and the clear danger motive reasoning agency competition the two science and reasonable to subject to consideration science be different and science and the total agency differentiated more different and the share on the city research to deal with access to standard knowledge for the active represent science for the research world and difference about and all the agency political regular and the foundation the book doctor to the political influence of the expert and the judgment of scientific research and the presumption would check motivated reason.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay, second image,
I mean,
okay. You know what, I'm gonna do that too. It's probably a bad idea, because I need to look at your only see you do it, but, okay. Second image, what is the process for determining whether an agency has used the best science available?
well, the APA decides whether a rule has been arbitrary and capricious. Different analysis use science to determine it. The NWPR did not protect ecosystems, nor but was an economic incentive and violated something with federalism, and so it violated the APA's rule of being arbitrary and capricious.
So, I guess, how does a court decide whether something is arbitrary and capricious?
Whether the agency has used the best science possible and the means to do so.
So I guess you sort of get where I'm going. This seems a bit circular.
I disagree. It's a government process that has existed for a long time in which agencies make a rule if it is arbitrary and capricious.
You said it violates best available science if it's arbitrary, and it's arbitrary if it violates the best available science. Like, I guess
So-
besides this.
So
like,
the agencies make a rule. If someone deems the rule arbitrary and capricious, then they would sue or comment and say that is bad.
who has, okay, so anybody that like leaves a comment on the notice and comment process, they can sue and say this is arbitrary.
Yeah, or after the rule is passed, they can sue, which was this case.
Okay, sure. The first advantage, I guess, this piece of clear evidence does seem to say wetlands are important. What evidence says like wetlands in the U.S. are sufficient to reverse global
The
warming?
bottom part of the card says that the U.S. wetlands have like a higher sea stock and get a lot more carbon for some soil reason. I don't
Yeah,
know.
those lines are about like wetland peat, which is like if that were to burn, that would release a bunch of carbon into the atmosphere. I guess I'm wondering what card says like the carbon sequestration effect of wetlands is enough to solve
I think
all
WRRR
of the
says
CO2 in the
I
atmosphere.
think WRRR says it's sufficient to combat warming to a point that it's not existential.
Read a line that says
And
that.
the second part is we've made a modeling claim that other countries would also protect their wetlands, which definitely makes it sufficient.
Wait, why is this card is not about the Aff?
Well, yeah, it doesn't say they will do WOTUS protection, but it does say that significant reforms, such as things like protecting wetlands, other countries have looked towards the U.S. They model their environmental policies
It
off
says
the
the
U.S.
EPA has programs that collaborate with other countries.
It has credibility, programs, resources, and like a standing in the global order of environmental protection. So those countries would look towards the U.S.
Okay. The democracy impact I guess this limb card says, like, the agency's flip-flopping is undemocratic. Where does it say a lack of that is sufficient to, like, revitalize global
Well, I
democracy?
think it said the bottom part of the card says that it would wreck democratic governance. I think that's also
Well, yeah,
part of like,
I get it says that. I'm asking for, like, the reverse causal line that says the absence of said procedure would be sufficient to solve everything that is wrong with democracy today.
well, not everything that is. Obviously, there are other facets of democracy, but we've made a reverse causal claim that maximizing science allows the populace to understand what's happening with the government.
So population, it's like Trump supporters are taught about science, democracy problems go away.
Like, this is sort of reductionist, like, insofar, like, there's a general populace that does pay attention to the government that we've said is, like, part of the democratic process.
We're setting up.
Yeah.
Order is 8 off, advantage 2, advantage 1.
8?
Yes.
Oh no, I'm gonna be. I accidentally created 8 app sheets instead of 8 neg sheets, so I'm going to do this. Yes, I want to delete.
What do you got? Okay, anyone not good?
Yes.
Yeah, just let me know.
8 and the EPA and the water advantage.
Yeah.
Let me pull up the document, I'm good to go. I'm good.
Okay. Anyone not good?
First off, course production means regulations to obey protect means to regulate that excludes core action. US Code 20 regulation defined as any rule that expresses secretary vote negative Hawkins masses and not needs to do core firms that require regulators such as generic already by stopping next office these subs orders to exclude subs and prosecuting for orders. This means all water within jurisdiction so does and US Bill 20 ever simply switches to core action between the United States to as a company all sovereign domain vote negative just they just made after every reason federally owned ever municipal water system possible anticipate repair next office advantage not the United States state legislation statutory delegates administrative agency power delegate during who making identify particular statutory interpretation or policy should be made or reversible once issued and utilized by state available scientific practices when home game regulation built to wetlands provide sufficient funding to provide action conduct fertilization operations and their such and first plan solves certain and flow causes source 7 very next groups agencies and agencies and members might have credibility mechanism solutions all agencies that are opinion promulgate permanent rights to allow the agencies cannot later amend flex the ability just policy in accordance with essential to operation of agency mechanism by which agencies signal corporately attention to retain statutory interpretation on children unless where reliance is less important that articles such as Congress legislation empowering agencies specify that months of permanent regulation remain first in place be the agency to make correct regular decision which ones which contract wetlands all biodiversity pollution when all 20 artificially consistent off the consequences of wetland loss studies confirmed biodiversity benefits DWC raising sorry something knowledgeably habitats for valuable life provide dispersal and support organisms structure be rural natural wetlands or vegetation create potential for biodiversity standards reduce contribution around pollution theory increase heterogeneity and ecological diversity of biodiversity and iron fertilization solves more in bellow protein oxygen comes from just one species I have man by theory oxygen made by these animal plants doors that produced by primary forest air ratio nature plant as long as the nutrient and structure practically cleans where that no negotiable producible access to more iron plant would proliferate iron fertilization could quickly sequester metric tons of carbon dioxide annually on any plane with suck CO2 from the air until they die and sink to the seafloor. One microscope buildups will also the CO2 release when we burn their access and make our electricity iron fertilization works and science behind it has been vetted and published next to the ICHR company. Next to program not to request an salary advisory committee from the Numeric Confirmation of Human Rights on the issue whether to reinstate the clean water rule definition of water in the United States on the grounds that agencies influence will consider relevant scientific evidence when adopting a review or asking the case take priority and fully cover any costs associated with deciding the case. The counterpoint solves the claim with the issue document 21. 2021 ICHR petition terms facing threats as a result of water code ICHR petition the usage of violation of the Giuliano offers concrete movement which exhaustion is reachable that which is displayed to make the ICHR times on the pressure US fails on the jurisdiction and state of remember the ICHR action of walking rights for emerging corporate impacts and break pressure on the US and other actions to see confidence key to OAS credibility human OA influence in nature norms and important business making and more reality rights and thing too notice and limitations discourse and opening originally member state to college jurisdiction the ICHR properly spend enemy entering consolidation course for the OAS court he's been used for original states also the New Mexico Central Governor 14 will tell everyone democracy is central strength of democracy. We talk about water, becoming the most valuable commodity, wars being fought, civilly threatened in this hemisphere, some of the most diverse countries, though. Environmental consideration always matters, anchor, marker, critical peace and democracy, though. Face first terrorists and narcotic corporate organized always become a leader in the Euro security terrorist attacks on infrastructure once area as always to promote effective humanity building, but always focus on key challenges over time. South of this concept basis confidence is high now, March 22. Economy will expand in the spring, coming from Omicron labor, inflation almost all infrastructure, interest rate, hike in moderate economic growth for 2022. U.S. expanding will expand by 3.5%. Plans to give you an successful student in every part of the U.S. tracks. Certainty in different states, countless businesses throughout the country. Companies all 14 more quotas. Of all 4 wellness cases that eventually drain navigable waters, develop facilities without permits, and because there are many miles from navigable water, use Supreme Court rich. Countries throughout the federal jurisdiction of the United States trust to continue with significant acts of proposal, which will rely significantly on jurisdiction indeed. Cuts to significant acts of complete north limits. Proposal to the concept of virtually any country where every drop of water is intimately controlled, nothing court should suggest. Congress and intended and equitable impact standards such standards are more common in combination with this law. Student act jurisdiction other wellness. Lack of physical connection, agency proposals, virtual logic, or economics be a young breaking point, making any theoretical effect on area of distant navigable water, saving here, speculating that substantial waters rules vaguely, legal law would have the same impact on the business of all sides, revised definition can be seen now, with unprecedented assertion causes nuclear war and global central access to Mohawk 21 second version 1 out, implication of security, complicating more recent one areas, so by economic structure, industry, political reliance with U.S. general rules, we felt looking at that line where workforce did, then nuclear chemical plants along with a surgeon, industrial accidents, California World War II, depression, history, repeats of blood effects, including Iran, U.S. China competition over Taiwan, NCS, Korean Pro, India, Pakistan, nuclear war, nuclear competition between India and Russia. Next up is the core politics is that core will decline to overturn abortion present now hinges on essential law controlled by Roberts, political capital, Roberts 21. The court seeing justices aligned with Dr. Robertson and refusing to accept only a shake court credibility, just to hinder victory of the liberal Robertson institutions once conservative competence, he getting ally Kavanaugh Pierre Barrett, ACI LGBT ruling procedural, the white, doing law in the middle was very conservative, follow that. Case law agreement alternatives such as majority don't think it's not going to make any changes. They want to shut the world between court capital is important because capital is companies court developed through with that. Case for abortion, AFSAP CC filed 15 in the US, such a matter activism, avoided provoking nutrition previous people. The courts have taken much less of a present environment position, lacking the environmental pressure, slow movement, courts facilities, greater depression, certainly provide the least turmoil. US policy models globally most GFW17. We approve that U.S. policy influence policy decision globally and block access to reproductive health rights, U.S. criminal women's rights, all the world limbs, not place ensure rights to all black women are being global in relation president women's rights leader, examining repression of women around the world and facing threats and are estimating about the U.S. administration and policy in U.S. impact on global communities, mainly key issue in U.S. domestic policy, and clear access to health care and underswell by the world U.S. leadership plays in the world, expanding reproductive freedom, slows up our population extinction, and going alongside their economics, conclude as increase of maternal will change magnitude, increase the ability to use economic environments for require population growth of world peak at 8 billion, their diminished saving population might peak of policy, and reproductive freedom and alternative result from intent population immediately shift to a plan with their feet takes when one have access means should bring in the intervals length which measures can become less frequently slow population growth birth control spread fertility plummeted next to the second okay federal water management economizes water through facilities tips decision rules on 18 state management programs that advance ecological eligibility achieved through management units and consider resources outside of cultural realities through system power that entails on cultural lands these indigenous people want water and kindness resources that can be unexploited attrition close economic control burning water visible to company agencies legibility is related with the national identity state expansion these contribute colonial the specific stellar rock the entire plan measure 18 stellar geopolitics final phase with its interviewing severe fortress state capitalism colonialism terminal crisis documents find themselves besieged authority increasing the challenge for position not distraction from legal change your identity politics geopolitics incomes one nation on the whole rules which say chaos like the world was not ring like the place to an animal ringer or trouble the world's never seen alternatives decolonize water that's also 19 the addition theories to review frameworks and analysis of governance being changed to understand water not as hydrological system as culture social separate from politics culture program water ontology rooted in the waters living anti-colonial understanding waters which should be decolonized or try to decolonize now second advantage. Status quo solves all their offense. First, existing external constraints are more onerous than the AP, but don't lead to the term. Making 19 lack proceduralism, not applying absent charge. Further, owners permanent remain called the global returning agency. Absence of proceduralism, not applying anything about the procedure agency. Up to structure, content, any organizer or employee. Procedure implicit allocate responsibility into procedure matter discretion. They can be reconsidered. But justification seconds, there's no flip-flopping now. But 18, based by agency that the act on a more requirement. Most likely, actual agency behavior regulation typically follow years of work. Hundreds of estimation during the emergent day result of regulatory obfuscation claims. Clash with Gorish's claim. Mark the card at Gorish's claim. Third, agency is using best time to practice verdict. 22, the customer called agency increase safeguards around political research the capture parity violations, fall protecting parity, essential progress in clients, by removal of political influence research generally, priority the process of applying APA decimates regulatory flexibility, invites heavy hand scrutiny by industry judges, stress level is time for reassessment, rising one size fit all formal rulemaking, courts have adequate complexity, rulemaking necessary to classification, they influence cost, they government inefficient and by Asian courts have spent APA performance beyond the text application and labor and presented, guidance decision option for APA, the laborious never ending process that helps code enforcing and new agency for rapidly expanding issues within authorities to effectuate policy change in the executive approach, especially for scientific review, APA is Wars Book already 2092 scientific reviews, technical issues, opportunity for FACA, open up scrutiny over running to charge committee, make this meeting public review, utilize process, increase expenditures, please must time. That's why no review science will begin generous time to recommend agency refrain, but agency must respond in a formal way, making kind of little obstacles. The first advantage by SNP cash, undermine federal deterrence, according to 20 streaming federal, companies have to the plan enforcing KCP, personnel, enforcing income more accurately, one arm term without managed by violence, obstacles deterrence, exceptions undermine the writing title 19, the war will have little effect on pharmacy, everywhere except agricultural discharges and warming, as is an existential like 21 cherry pick analysis, activist, rather than Robertson, Friday, Virginia, individual evidence support these there's no trend uptake, hot days, every construction temperature over 1 million years, so nothing unusual, RPC, climbing, or RPC been growing, the global sea ice remain constant, zero reduction, large under, by constant extension, now various falling on the overstation by a factor of 3, for records, that's right, and the assume realistic, increase, average increase, over 5 times borderline impossible, and more past the points, that's less than 16, cold construction, never limited below, 4 more points, on the point in our turn, on the reading below 400 ppm, no matter what the world's emissions are now.
So Zlock mark that, no matter what the world's emissions are now.
You didn't get through all 8.
I'm sorry.
Okay, is everyone good?
Yep.
Oh wait, actually, status,
Conditional.
can you take blanks?
No.
Okay, the second card, the core card, is about education policy. I guess like, why is, like, what? Why are all regulations have to be the executive?
I mean, it quotes the U.S. code title, says that regulation.
About education policy, it says in the, so it says, in the unhighlighted portion, it says in this context. I guess why in other contexts doesn't mean.
Sure, if you want to go for like precision, we can have the debate. Obviously, we'll read more cards.
No, well, it's not your intern, it's a violation
Like,
card.
So, not super worried about this just because like we are right, there are more cards that say this is not the context. of
CWA
policy.
wasn't a regulation, yes or no?
Hmm?
The CWA wasn't a regulation, yes or no?
Like the act itself?
Yes.
No.
The CWA was not regulation in and of itself, but like
It,
when the
it
EPA
caused,
enforced
it caused like other things, so like the National Water Protection Rule was a regulation because that was implemented by an administrative officer.
Okay,
But like,
sure.
Yeah.
when Congress passes things that is not regulating.
Okay. The court politics is sad. The Eagleman card says that we're heading towards overpopulation now and that will kill us all. And it says expanding freedom might be able to check it. The liberal ruling now would just uphold current abortion standards. How does it expand freedom?
I mean, like, if you think that it would be, like, I think that's a modeling claim, the GFW.
No. Wait. What about the liberal ruling changes the status quo? Because right now laws already exist.
The GFW card says that this would ignite women's rights movements across the world and increase.
That card is just about expanding freedom and rights in the
disagree.
U.S.
Like, it is very.
The current court issuing a pro-abortion ruling would clearly send a pretty big signal, which is like connects to
The card is also very
Right.
explicit about like movements like solving this across the world and creating more freedoms. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Set call, can it ever result in the USFG doing what is?
No.
Okay. The case page, the Bagley card seems to say like procedures are bad. Broadly, I guess like, why do the checks outlined on that card not link to the turn? I know you tagged it that way, but like, what's the warrant?
So back in when you see cross-ex, you're like, the way this works is when notice and comment happens, anybody that comments on a rule has the ability to sue and create a court case. Argument is that this is bad because it means that people, like, because there's inevitably opposition to every controversial rule. People will dredge up court cases, there will be dozens of challenges, and the process of having agencies try to justify themselves dozens of times over to like inexperienced judges with no expertise is bad. It is not, argument is not that applying science is bad, it is that the process of enforcing that via court action is like onerous.
Okay, so it's just like the court's bad.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or like specifically APA, arbitrary and capricious review, but yeah.
okay, I guess the, yeah, I don't know, that was basically all I needed.
Okay, 10 minutes. Ready? 27. June stand. The order will be the APA advantage, which is advantage 2, then the water advantage, and T subsets, T regulation cannot be the courts, the advantage counter plan, take prep for 1 second. Gene, yes, that's keep plans. Okay. Okay. Where was that? Okay, T subsets, T courts, advantage counter plan, the IACHR counter plan, IACHR,
That was brutal.
the K, BizCon, the court politics, they say.
Give me a second, let me get the document.
5, 6, 7. Yeah, basically.
But where's the EPA?
Uh,
Oh, I didn't ever bring that.
yeah.
You did not read that, okay.
I'm gonna make sure I just have all of this covered.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm just making sure I have all that in order, but
Okay.
it's all in jobs. Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Every impact was dropped under the attack from diseases and the democratic decline. All cause extinction makes a tire die for the act. One is wrong. It's one constraints. This part is about procedural, not rulemaking, which is our impact. Secondly, it's pre-2020. Our evidence is that Trump's 2020 rule was what shattered the APA. 1C2. Yes, flip flops. This is just dead or wrong. Because Trump undid all Obama's and undid all Trump's proves it's based on politics, not based on science. Number 3. This is dead wrong. In the status quo, they're not using science. Calling 7-7. EPA alleging wrong science, continuing under Biden alteration. Artifacts of Trump either continuing to keep here. Besides, the promise persisting inside EPA secretary has become an oxymoron. Want to see for the uniqueness for the term the EPA existed for 100 years, only ever written by Trump. So we searched their impacts the whole last century. Plus, Chevron's getting eviscerated now. Maths 18, rise of Chevron, conservative open fire, USOP, the crying admin, Chevron's under siege robots. Thomas goes to the leader and works to exhale and near the doctrine it came. TH has to take order, the different protocols, different opinion where one of that Chevron remain, and there's no link, and we're a pre-reg. The plan is not judicial review over everything. The APA existed for decades, and litigation is inevitable, but the plan just begs the question of whether those regulations are effective and scientific. The CBA is a commitment device that goes both ways to ensure no over or under regulation. It does not constrain when quick action is needed. This is true because this balanced approach prevents over and under regulation and also forces better regs and updating over time. 2019, inputs that make a high quality CBA would be equal to alternative scientific consensus. The CBA is likely to strike down the right balance. CBA is not regulatory policy because action involves also the CBA permits the regulatory policy for has ways in HCL to the best CBA. There is significant cost even under regulation. CBA permits to be beneficial. Observation around reasonable rulemaking. Professionals relies on CBA means there's a policy means have basis scientific and also no impact to 18 flag, which means we get interested in when they are the other advantage. The EPA budget cuts does not matter because we're not the EPA. EPA 21 individual permits are reviewed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. 1C2 is wrong. It's answered by evidence from 19 that says that the Maui decision now regulates the regular solution. There's no ag exemption. So, yes, extinction warnings is a process, not an event. Cascading fever labs make warming application impossible. And to trigger disease, disaster, nuclear war, that's very crib. They're able to assume adaptation. The R says that's impossible because of resource shortages and conflicts. They say warming inevitable. This says that some is inevitable, but we can still avoid catastrophic warming. We need the plan. T. We plan in the vacuum is only objective standard. The protection applied to an individual water resource for the following in 18 protection is water relation to preservation. It includes prevention of WMDs in the ocean, reduction of pesticides, pollutants, included water, protection of vessels, and things for collecting wastewater for our interpretation first. Intent to find out ways contextual uses like thereof are arbitrary. 2, it makes it burden presently every single drop of water is impossible for the app. 3, it's overlimiting. 1 happens to the pigs and creates still debates. 4, only this matter contribution functional contribution only Aristotle solves their impact and functionalness can check explosion good dubs. He goes to startup. The court's T. We meet the plan specified use of G. We don't have to use the courts. Counter-interpretation courts can regulate the outro 16 regulatory function. Of course, judges make laws that resolve disputes with relation character of application for some line of absence of insufficient list of criteria judicial regulations. The environment takes place judicial proceedings exercise a regulatory function for interpretation of one's precision. There was the context of education, not water, choose off ground. Courts are key to check stage 3. We solve dead ground. Troubles aging counterclaims and decides to specify everything above from the other T page. The advantage counterclaim. Permutation to any combination of any of the claims that they kicked up, or that solves that benefit. It shields courts because it's on the basis of the APA 3, and it also links that benefit because it causes more scientific regulation, so it links to the BISCON and first blanket, erodes rule of law and separation of powers, 120, so evidence influence adjust the use of true view from SPA or separate NT, that can biparty federal traditions, say public and agency response to review is false one, that causes nuclear war and only 18%. Assume they could take those more than community suffocation, make up for purpose and unilateral action, right? President consider the word on universal force, because broken conversations that can lead to nuclear holocaust. All restraints to remove it in broad spectrum of the SDS Iran, created enemies can open to nuclear war. The president must restrain the second plank. It fails. Agencies can still make bad, unscientific rules. Post plan 3, the next plank, it fails. Empirically, go back in 14, there are 51 CWs and 3/4 have some kind of structural failure and are operating properly. Improper design, subject logging, specific implementation, leakage, and lack of a post-construction operation. The iron stuff is just junk science. If it actually works, scientists would have already done it. There's no reason why the kind of thing is key because they're developing it in the status quo. Condos voting issue, time just give the 2AC. Academic just as a kind of claims, case-specific research. This also solves your offense. The other kind of plan provision to both schools would not move the issue for an international commission. Provision to the kind of way the plan could be done permanent the app, and then I process the kind of plan on something else. That solves the insert of the text below does not solve advantage 2 because it does not result in as good as precedent. There are all causes to HR violations, detention camps, criminal justice problems, and false claims in 1 and C. Document and 21 the U.S. is promoting extraction of public acts and impacting just plaintiffs. And the OAS is strong down, the reason for the kind of plan 1C. Number 14, the OAS has been critical for every single element for 100 years. Notice that the HR is key to diplomacy. We get the impact even A, we didn't turn length the K. Determine the desirability of the plan or purpose of a pet alternative and goes into aggressive and self-limiting to destroy the meaningful class of branch provision to both the one that the raw results. The resilience to the app where it fails, 3 the link turn 3 the all fails, it takes decades. If you could not just assisting the case, this is disad. 14 in that way is irreversible and life is direct to the alternative and yeah, okay. The BISCON. First, BISCON is shattered down from the chart CEIC 22 to come to chapter 0.6 in January. Growth in exports were positive in 2015. Once or 2 charts from the USDA and New York Times. First is the USDA Economic Research Service in 19 and New York Times in 20. It's not there, it's not there. New EPA reg stump, National Law Review 3-4 EP release, policy age volunteers and on-teaching regarding the action include aggressively and unannounced inspections, and new program to expand the air monitoring capacity, community air monitoring, increase monitoring and oversight of polluting facilities. And Biden's new rule will be comparatively worse for confidence in the plan. APF 270 APF submitted comments. The new rule, the proposed rule, learns to take us back to vague and complicated regulations on the rules, could lead to potentially unlimited jurisdiction and December's 2008 and COVID disproven impact to the economy. No econ wars. Justice 16 recession did not lead to deterioration to security. Not that the econ effects modest. IEP report was peaceful in 2012. Same as in OSID wetlands. Military expenditures and decline. The studies good for recession does not trigger conflict with patterns of stability crisis is not generated. Protection enlisted. Nationalism and plan. Donated trillions with clone in 20. Water degradation starts. Economic commercial immigration fisheries contribute to 212 billion. Consumers spend 887 billion on auto-regulation. Wetlands contribute trillions to flood damage with their next benefits. Cost of 2020 rule outweigh benefits. The court decided. The impact is that increased access is key. This is impossible because Interlink is about upholding the status quo, which is insufficient to solve the impact. Preventing votes is also impossible. It's not just 1214. And Washington try to read TVs could believe this is receptive to argument. CMS exceeded authority in other recent cases. Members show varying interest in reassessing Chevron Roberts possible to make prediction rulings. Any attempt to infer votes is an educated against it fail. Roberts will gut row the former overrule. Overrule has the same impact limit in 12.1. Likely, Gene Roberts are publicity prevent arrest another constitution of our court viability by bending viability the court in overrule row without any up to the state will reach impose even more severe restrictions. They strike down at the end of BRRR thumbs was a literal rule federal court that expanded ways and recent Roberts rulings in environmental and administrative law cases thumb King 11.3. Biden Roberts acknowledged what nature's comment Roberts sees no reason to revisit environmental administrative law cases had in some Republicans in 5 cases and Roe overall will not affect global abortion access status in Johnny 1021 the abortion surpassed use in abortion in countries with laws people are restricted abortion is really available in practice. The word order and transport liberalization expand access to reproductive health care to prevent abortion would make the U.S. an outlier. One is the most says algae blooms, those cause extinction. Moose snow in 21, deoxygenation will occur with the increase in algae, which dissolve the oxygen, making it unavailable to animals, destabilizing the fragile food chain that humans depend on. We need for fish, birds to survive and make life livable. We need a system of interactive software. Deoxygenation is a reduced use of energy from places where it's harmful to places that is not. Animals can't function there. Will be a failure to build systems that make the earth habitable.
Download the NBA Dropbox, by the way.
One of you had a problem with the stream. Lawrence appreciates the stream. Is that right? Am I wrong about that?
I'm sorry.
Hamrick told me one of y'all has a problem with watching one of the streams or needs a link or something. Maybe that's, I'm in the wrong room, but
I wouldn't guess you're in the wrong room.
okay.
Have fun, guys.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Quick clarification question. The clean water rule, would it use the significant nexus test?
So it doesn't use a test, but it's already used a test to come to that conclusion.
Okay,
That makes sense.
sure. I guess what is that conclusion?
That wetlands and ephemeral streams are covered under the CWA.
Okay, cool. Or what, actually, so with the plan fiat that like it just comes to that conclusion, or like with the plan also fiat like, or like how does the plan resolve that?
The fiat reinstates Obama's 2015 rule, which protected wetlands and ephemeral streams. Obama kind of based that off the significant nexus test. The tests are used by courts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Really quickly, just to check the team. I live in condo.
That should be it.
Okay. The ICHR counter plan. The like all causes to human rights violations. Like why does that take out the kind of net benefit, or like what is the argument?
So your argument is that the IACHR or whatever is key to U.S. credibility. So that's or the reality is it's impossible because there's so many other HR violations that mean the U.S. could never be credible without resolving this.
We've read an impact about OAS credibility. Why does that have anything to do with U.S.?
When you explain the counter plan, I'll contextualize it. But as of now, the U.S. is committing mass human rights violations. One SCOTUS ruling over wetlands is not going to overcome that.
Okay, cool. That's fine. The case debate really quickly. I guess like who, like when people like try to, or like when people don't follow the clean water rule, who cracks down on them, or like how do they punish?
So permits are given by the Army Corps of Engineers.
So like if they're not like following regulations, like who punishes them?
The Army Corps of Engineers.
How? The Army Corps of Engineers like build stuff and like issues permits. Like where do they have like administrative capabilities to like, crack down on like polluters?
The F says that with them, I regret says they enforce the Clean Water Act.
Which piece of it?
This is about section 401 permits for building new buildings near wetlands. Like,
Yeah, they enforce the Clean Water Act.
they don't enforce it. They just issue permits. Like, what does that have to do with like actual cracking down? Like, if people just decide just to like
So
not
the
listen
regs-
to the permits.
Regulations are made by the EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers enforces those regulations.
Okay, sure, that's
How it
fine.
works.
The advantage kind of plan, the delegation plank, like the Widener card, is like agencies binding parties without traditional safeguards. The counterplan plank like forces the agencies to not be able to like go back and like change their own policies. Like where does the plank bind like regulatory parties, I guess? What is the link to this side? Sorry.
So the way the counterplan makes sense to me is that once a rule is put in place, it can never be overturned. That's the way I read it.
agencies have to choose to do that.
Yeah, which is bad, because it erodes separation of powers. If one agency can do whatever they want without checks and balances, that'd be bad.
It's 10 minutes.
Yeah, just saying. It's not the answer to that. That's right. That's probably usually stuff.
Yeah. 7:10. So the card, actually that's misleading because it makes it sound like I'm deleting analytics. I would like to do that. Okay. It's not. Advantage counterplan, IACHR counterplan, critique, court politics, APA advantage, wetlands advantage.
Hold on, what's after the K?
After the critique, court politics, DA, the APA advantage, and then the wetlands advantage.
Get to the document. Sorry, give me 1 second here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sheldon just asked me what I want for lunch. That is more important than this.
Hot chicken?
What?
Is that hot chicken?
Yeah.
Nice.
The one we were going to do is like closed today though, so that's pretty sad. Ooh.
Was it Chick-fil-A?
Or you can skip whenever.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Counterplans holds the entirety of the case versus the first advantage for constructed wetlands solved by university. They're built away from pollutant and resistant to runoff. Second design fertilization solves working independently. That was mostly dropped increased natural sequestration mechanisms in the other which removes the need to preserve wetlands. It also solves the second division. The agencies use the best practices and newest science making decisions, and the counterplan has the agencies also choose to either entrench certain regulations as affirmative, also gives them the option of choosing not to entrench others. This preserves flexibility by leaving the decision in their hands, allowing them to lock regulations to stay the same, but changes as they need to adopt new technology. This was in the fairness case, the plan as uniform reserve judges make decisions while the counterplan allows agencies and experts to craft regulations. The expertise that deals with the justice only agency flexibility locks in a coherent policy which will explain more on the term permutation. For the first permutation, either link to establish because if it doesn't include the app, it serves but if it does, then it links rather. It doesn't matter how you flip the blank chart. It does not link to the benefit. Yes, it does. Feel that agencies use science, but that is not the link to the term. Our argument is that imposing it via core process is bad because it causes endless litigation. That was explained in cross. It does not link to business confidence. It does not link to business confidence because it doesn't impose any regulations to constructive wetlands. Do not regulate anybody, and the iron fertilization plant just throws money at companies in order to incentivize them to do it. It does not regulate anything, and all of our link cards on the Visconti will be specific, will be plan specific. The SOP add-on is terrible versus the counterplan solves it. It's about agencies being too flexible. The counterplan solves it because VLC uses the best possible. The VLC uses the best possible science and gives them the ability to entrench regulations. The card is also about guidance documents, which the app does not solve. To AC Weiner in 2030 speaks with in terms of the issue drafted guidance supervision process documents agency sources. For example, the last one for energy officials said that energy personnel think that draft guidance is not enough. There's also no internal link. The impact card is about too much deference in foreign policy. The foreign policy is not conducted through guidance documents because even if they solve it, it does not spill over to the terminal impact. There's also all causes separation of powers. Obviously, guidance documents are not the only thing. The only thing 4 years of Trump. The separation of powers. There's also no terminal impact. This card's about Trump going rogue and launching a nuke. Biden will not do the same. Biden will not do the same. They say that agencies can still make bad rules. You're wrong. They counterplan just fiats out of this. They just fiat that they choose internally to use the best science for making policy. There's no explanation of why that absolutely makes sense. This is all in cross-constructed wetlands. Do work. The card is terrible. It's about one province in Turkey says that they failed because nobody monitored them after building them. Durable fiats all the Suzy called up 14. There are 51 provinces in Turkey. The lack of most constructed operation and monitoring and maintenance activities constructed wetlands do work. Checking all 20 operation
Accuracy of the student and the balance keepers going dash balance characters and diversity integrated balance maximize potential for good for high diversity could be built could be built through hydrological. They say that iron fertilization is bad. No, the more this we see is if it was good, scientists would have done it. Obviously now political factors have gone the way in the past. This does not answer our partners are great and say that it would be sufficient solve even if you don't solve as well as the efficient defalsification trimming counterplan is sufficient solve forming this carrying 12. Dumping iron carrying carbon dioxide reducing climate change differentiating some power the resolve to the team that's not the bloom and the 1,000 meters deep. Carbon therefore likely to be kept with the rate of global warming conditionality is good. Our interpretation is we get read it versus flexibility, flexibility check back because the device is like direct seconds. Logic proving compounds if that doesn't mean the plan is good, that there is community ability critiquing the capacity around the British advice participation to be the ability to have a fallback strategy is the only thing driving your reputation, not defense. One, it skews in the whole CKC speeds. The second is visual tricky forces to control visual tricky training. The third is functional limits. Lots of accountability get redundant. You have to start cutting corners, justifying action is because this much model is bad. Will explicitly concede across line reasonability. May just like concede RBI. There's a high bar for Apple and inspire reject the argument. Not the team's dispositionality is bad because justifies forces it. Cheating counterplan in order to force the action for Bermuda, and every D has been evident in every counterplan, which constrains flexibility. Constrains flexibility. They say the algae blooms out and one constructive wetland solid because this is about runoff going into the Gulf of Mexico. Which constructive wetland solve also it's about dead zones. The Arabian Sea is larger and it'll solve it. This for 18 Mexico is 8,000 square miles. Every sea systems larger and thickest and cross resiliency defense. And the second advantage which I'm going to do in a second. IC check counterplan. Perm test competition going for theories. Any theories is a reason to direct the argument on the team as for cross ice. Critique perm test competition going for it. It was Condo. Court TA concede that the decision wouldn't solve no predictions. Also takes out any link terms that I missed. APA bench. The Aff Washburn regulatory flexibility agencies are choosing to use the best science available now and to train themselves internally by the process of core review based on regulating onerous and impossible. The process to show you allows thousands of people to challenge any rules. They see agencies have to respond to everything, which is terrible. The status quo does solve. Agencies are restraining themselves internally now. They say it's about procedure. Yes, that is our point. Internal procedure is efficient. Says it's quote more onerous, but the process it has a higher bar for meeting it than the court review. But the process of imposing it is internally, so it doesn't require. It doesn't lead to endless litigation. So it doesn't lead to the term resolves. The status quo, they say flip flop having down. Your cards are all old. This is also an assertion without a warrant. Overwhelmingly flip floppings are not happening in the status quo. That's from 13th century works with the expertise. Lower courts are bound by the position of personal or self-interest with levels of adapting the lower courts authority. They say to be serious and new directions of wise policies, but independently, even if they're correct with flip flop, they drop the careful and solves it because it gives agencies the ability to entrench regulations. If they're correct about their uniqueness claim that Biden wants to impose these regulations now, that agencies would logically choose to make the regulations binding. They say Biden fails. No, this card from 6 months ago says that it proves our point because it says that Biden is having a tough time imposing sticky regulation, which proves that there is inertia from one administration to the next, which proves that there is no flip-flops happening now. They say the APA has existed for years. Yes, that's fine. All of your terminal impacts are about modern emerging challenges because most of your cards are from 2020 or from 2021. The fact that the new emerging technology regulations didn't exist in the 80s does not mean anything. They said the Chevron is collapsing now. No, this is not responsive because it's not. This is distinct from the APA review process, but Chevron will strive out the 621 Chevron's future purple. Overrule the to be by faith justification for reference. Keys are proves 620 the lower Chevron the Chevron the distance Chevron this is the course. Although it's also Chevron keys are rejected the closer or those representations strikes the core and make glad to overrule deference. Yes, link the code right here is terrible. It's just that the cost benefit analysis is fine. That is our argument and the reason the counterpart is not linked to the benefit arguments that imposing it via court review is bad with a card responding to APA is extreme red to appears in the Peterson and 6 of the state of Robinson which laws application ruling every statute long details was well coming to right issue of all must come to Peterson instruction also review by signal that judges judicial overreach is needed because we already see that the nation versus preambles and arguments the logical course policies remand there's a danger of overreaching the function or anything so that is if self-audit is called as managed traffic or direct the responsibility and traffic can be time-consuming aspect of the causes agencies to give up role regulating altogether as only and one increases the cause of the relationship to interpretation of the policy agency when the technical justice rotation the regimes of the official role show view slows down role making the interference extra removal contribute to classification to development of federal courts by looking potential regulation of the questions about analysis open for agencies to use it appeals, different, to use this commercial agency system, so the agency consent to us, lawyers, examination, like the agency's resources will be diverted, mark the card, diverted, the other advantage. Being resolved that the EPA does not have resources or scope of authority to enforce the rules. They are not the Department of Army Corps of Engineers. They allow permitting for building new projects, but it is not the same thing as enforcing the entirety of the word's definition, except that they also continue that warming is inevitable. The 2AC just sort of asserts that they're sufficient to represent non-responsive references that even if we were sufficiently able to cut off elevations by sequestering all carbon currently in the atmosphere, it does not matter because we're still past tipping points and positive victims have already been triggered. No warming effects. Warming is exaggerated data, sure, fixing the and risk claims, rely on following effects like war damage, which rely on inaccurate models of such adaptation stalls as 2021. Responsible for the problem in terms of as usual, like the concentrated log, and the translated probability of results are helpful. There's no shortcuts to circling because there's conflict of relations, there's no required serious forecasts. That was marked as serious forecasts.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Okay. What card other than 1NC or 2NC makes an impact claim for agency flex?
Sorry, did you say what cards other than the one?
No, what cards in the 1NC or 2NC? Sorry.
Yeah, so we read a bunch of cards, two main claims. First, if agencies think that they'll be bogged down for years in litigation, they just won't issue rules at all. Second, this piece of, what is it, Shapiro evidence says that the process of court review diverts agency resources. And our argument is just like the rules would not happen.
That first point, is that just a comedy card?
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. And so the card with the other thing was what?
Shapiro. And also the 1MC cards are like, this would stop rules from happening altogether. So like,
Which ban all rules?
Like
The APA was around for like 100 years and there were rules, so I'm confused how that was possible.
Yeah, like there was rulemaking was not, like, agency rulemaking, sorry, I can't speak to that. Agency rulemaking was historically very, very, very slow for the past couple of decades. Like, the reason...
So the impact is just slow, not banning, or not preventing rules? It's just slowing down?
Like, rules would be issued less. We don't have to win that every rule would never happen, just that, like, this would be really bad for agencies.
So the advantage
And also, the Aff Scientific Review Standard didn't exist a couple decades ago, and we've read evidence that, like, imposing that would be bad.
Okay. What's the mechanism for ensuring agencies integrate their rules based on science? What's the mechanism in the counterplan that ensures agencies use science to make rules?
Based on what I understand about the Aff mechanism, the agencies would pick things based on the best available science. They would have to then justify it to the court.
It's still up to the agency. In the counterplan, it's still up to the agency what's scientific and what's not.
Well, yeah, but like that would also be up to the agency under the rule of the plan. You just have to justify it to the courts in a very onerous way, and courts aren't experts in any of this, so like court checks.
So after the counterplan, what's stopping an agency from like making a rule that is not based in science?
I'm confused what you mean, like fiat.
Okay, so
They
you
would
just
like
fiat the
consult
agency?
scientists. They would, yeah, we fiat the agency, consult scientists. Whatever the Aff rules would be required of agencies, we just fiat that happens.
Okay,
differently.
would that result in the plan happening? Because
No.
the plan's based in science?
No.
Why not? Like, why not?
Well, A, not an argument, and to C,
What? Okay, this is a new explanation of it. Okay, keep going.
I'm confused why that would.
Okay, sure. The first plank of the counter plan, entrenching a rule, that means it's permanent across administrations?
Gives them the ability to do that, yes.
Okay, so whenever they want, what's stopping them from like a bad rule entrenching it?
Well, I mean, your uniqueness claim is
So if an administration makes a rule, can the next administration overturn it, or is that rule entrenched forever?
if agencies choose to entrench it, it would be in place.
Across
For like a
administrations?
billion years it's entrenched.
I mean, probably not forever, but like there would be a heightened standard of overturning
Okay,
it.
that makes sense.
And like your uniqueness claims that they want to impose good regulations now, so like it doesn't really help you.
We're gonna lose some property.
34.
7:45.
Okay. So, yeah.
But I was kind of sad it wasn't a K. I saw your face when Zach didn't read it. Go ahead.
I was tempted a little bit. But did anyone write down how much time we have? I believe it was like 7.
7:10.
Okay, yeah.
The order is just this one.
That was subsets. Have you gone for two subsets?
I don't know. Give me 1 second to get my this.
Subsets debates are fun. You're at a tiny difference at like the Shriksville last year that I debated, and all we had was subset debates the entire time.
Well, like, I guess the topic wording of that topic made it make slightly more sense, but like, we define the words in the United States and
Some subset debates were like over whether or not the app would include all subsets of Chevron step 2 or not.
because wasn't the wording like nearly all?
That year it was just executive authority, so it was just like anything with deference.
Oh.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I think it's all over. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is slow. I'm not. Wait, actually, 1 second, bro. Did engineer plan, added plan to just not do the plan, just solve the thing they're talking about this? So just like, sure.
Yes, there's a 1 in our amendment coming.
Sure. Okay. Sure.
So,
So, new order is abandoned.
Are we getting with text or we gotta flow this carefully?
I don't think you need to flow this that carefully.
The words are literally don't do the plan.
Got it.
Okay.
We can set it down if you want.
No, you're not good. Cool. Advantage counterplan, new plank, don't do the plan to BizCon this time. Economic plan outweighs the undermines interdependence and causes leaders to start diversion in war drives and China and Russia independently drop that it culminates in existential accidents and nuclear and chemical plants. That's Mob turning link alone turns both advantages. Versus that turns certainty and massive link. Covax all 14 subside reprieve insurance and rules of the subject. California commercial industrial recreational residential activities and new layers of federal requirements because it defines being unusually vague and confusing enough to make it impossible for business to comprehend that they might have to be federal rather than state requirements only perform routine operations and creating regulatory uncertainty introducing significant access guarantees many years of additional litigation. Each step not demonstrating increased regulatory certainty and it's a bigger internal link and status progressions will reduce the better version of the app without the defects. Independently turns to advantage 1, Covax all 14. Rules not really about addressing the more emerging attempts to play long-standing state and control with centralized federal control in light of overwhelming evidence. The proposed rule would have a devastating impact without any real impact to water quality agencies are not issuing a rule over time people have to start having to start working effective entities to develop consensus-based applications and are legally defensible. The top level framing issue for all uniqueness questions. You should evaluate every number through the magnitude of the link. Tons of things are inevitably uncertain. We have tons of internal links, but WOTUS specifically making all industries illegal. A threshold for thumpers is way higher than usual when our link evidence is so good. At worst, the counterplan resolves these anyways. The first argument about business companies being high. The evidence is too old. The economy and competence are high now. One is the evidence post states there's factors in everything is predicted at 3.5 growth rate within the next year is increasing. 3 reasons versus Biden boom. Biden boom is real op-ed. Reports exaggerated decline of Gary. 33 economy grew at 5.7% strongest in years later show small business shot up about 30% compared to pandemic. If you told me at the end of the year I would have lost inflation less trouble than some fear energy costs. No, Russia will push up prices supply chain by the pandemic is over right now. We're not seeing inflation by Biden boom has only reached workers. We have a mistake to truck up fears that many don't seem to indicate which polls are requiring limited attitudes financial polls and strong economic growth. Second is that the app extrapolation is wrong. Business confidence is increasing despite Ukraine and other issues. The N31 and 30 regarding Ukraine 1 point emphasizing events have limited impact on confidence in the months that follow. Study major military venture that has a limited impact on economic variables such as inflation, interest rates, and growth. S&P balance of valuation improvement pulled by confidence is returning links. 3-4 Omicron receiving market rose a lot faster. Growth employer demand for overseas labor supply. No likely to keep growing healthy as even slow amidst Ukraine and raise U.S. American strong economies are concerned about Ukraine's tension. Oil prices could then inflation levels will reserves on track at Ukraine and inflation on the air. World companies resilience continue to drive growth and heads with the thresh.
Threshold for the uniqueness is total collapse because of how big the link is. Actually, yeah, the second argument about the economy going up in 2015, I'll read more cards on about this on the next couple of numbers, but it doesn't matter because even if Biden announced that he was going to implement the rule, even if Obama announced that he was going to implement the rule, there was tons of litigation to the point where businesses were fined because they knew it was going to happen. They knew that it would take years for it to happen, and that by the time litigation would be resolved, like
Just the 2015 rule was never fully implemented.
yeah, the 2015 rule was never fully implemented. I'll learn anything about the regulation. Regulation now card is wrong. It's not sufficient to trigger the link to the sudden nature of the plan. The plan is key. MacArthur 16. A confidence level shift in sentiment playing key role in our system analysis highlights common factor change, particularly their rapid and unexpected. Announcement policy shifts and stance of government policy. Biden regulations are anticipated with medical opposition that slows robots plans of departure from the school. Boom 618. Police robots in other countries of the United States are doubling down their efforts to EPA issue final voters rule. That rule was immediately subject to multiple lawsuits. The legal will be evaluated 100,000 common police men at the same point. A final rule will be issued if lawsuits will follow immediately thereafter. Heavily conservative core modifies this for years now, but the BRRR will means the plan is upheld at every level of judiciary. King 21 administration doesn't view conservatives required as opinion for federal environmental policies ruling stop pause on oil and gas for states and energy. Course friendly vision from the corporate freeze of binary rule. The WOTUS argument is wrong. The Toisi AFBF card is about it says the reason why Biden's rule is bad is because the significant nexus test. They would re-implement that. That was cross-sex. Toisi AFBF 27 including unconstitutionally vague significant nexus test. But I'll also do the link debate here. The error neg, both on the substance and especially the perception of the link, more than 375 industry traders have made clear they believe this would devastate their business. Codex L14, understand 375 groups from 50 states representing broader range of business, industry, and commercial interests that exercise and require the country right to express strong opposition to definition of the waters of the United States. Understand groups believe they will be seriously and adversely affected by the revised definition. You can also cross by the stuff, the Terrence case cards on the top, they also talk about how it's like, it crushes the economy and makes like business impossible. Terminal impacts. The thumpers are wrong. Post-COVID environment is unique. Global 21. Cuba, Africa, Colombia, Haiti, Rochester remain low COVID. Push out low tender rose attention more from the broader uprising. The Sahel conflict continues the same for Latin America and Asia. Protests well over 30 countries. Movement shocks road to cohesion potential for breakdown in order. The impact defense is wrong. First is that they dropped the accidents. In fact, second is that American economic strike prevents U.S. Russia-China war, station for road attack and regime instability. Tons of other scenarios. Bureau 16. Multilateral system purpose on strong U.S. China may never deliver knockout blow. Tarnish U.S. invincibility. Trigger limited criticism. Party lower growth makes it harder for liberalization. Plan for a world not have the West as the powerhouse. Harder consistent message to the U.S. and China and nuclear war is not knowable. As a region can come in the line, which will reform can be dangerous. There's no governance by U.S. leadership, engineering, drugs, and biology, infrastructure, and technology risk. So actually, the last argument about plan generating money is wrong. It's a question of case and like if no businesses exist post plan because they've all been struck down, obviously that overwhelms like cleaning up the environment a little bit. 100%.
one in our is the one in our just like one in our amendments bad?
It's condo and one in ornaments.
Wait, take that. Just all like, you don't need the F anymore.
Okay, the order will be the APA, the environmental advantage, the advantage counter plan, the dissent. No, we're not taking private. We're 420. We're not taking private. Go away.
You said it knock out.
Yeah.
I usually get a separate sheet of condos being extended. Does that go anything?
No, we're not.
Okay, wait, just let me talk about
But I'm not extending condo. You don't need extra sheet.
I'm downloading the doc right now, sorry, my computer's giving me the spinning wheel of death.
Wait, that's the wrong one. Oops.
I just thought Brett had the perfect plan, and you wanted to date Brett for something.
That's vital information.
Stupid argument.
Leave it to you two to do this.
I don't think Max is sitting back in Jersey. No, we'll see later. Okay, is everyone good?
I think in order.
Westminster,
What's the order?
Yeah.
APA, environment, counter plan.
I have seen the back of your jersey, don't
Okay.
worry.
Disease and AI outweigh which we said a deficit of the counterplan or a risk that we're right about the term means an affirmative in this way. Now go down to the first few defensive arguments. One is that there are no checks now, proved by the fact that Trump made bad rules. So obviously politicization overdetermines, proven by Congress being politicized. The flip-flopping argument is wrong because McGarland is more recent than all of your evidence, and I said that it flip-flops by administration because companies are uncertain, which is also proved by the Holman evidence. The last few arguments are wrong. Biden does not want to make regs in the context, and his administration is not complying with them. So there's still science now. Go down to the term one. There's no uniqueness because the API has existed. And then it proves that companies, agencies in the court, they're still able to make foundational regulations that are necessary because the APA does not constrain them from making those rules. And if this is true, then obviously that every regulation that the courts would have disliked would have been blocked to 2AC2. Chevron is being eviscerated now. It does matter. All of your oscillation cards about Chevron. And Chevron is a core question whether agencies have flexibility. And there's a court decision that's absolutely going to wreck it. So call. And then 125% of this would be research judged by Harvard APA. And give me sort of mentioning the notable absent really competent. States such as not interested in their decision. But never had method getting authority over London and people decide. There are also authority over the foundation dishes of the major portion company. Regulation market card. Regulation and it functionally overturns Chevron Credos and 117 to 2. Those never market cases standards target opportunity offered to check. The market is second filling out to consider administrative different. The concern over arbitration Chevron. The city universe person made a few race over certificated wireless numbers. Also people are public to get overturning Chevron. And the former arbitration functionally overturning. Go down to the link debate. One is that we do not constrain it. Ours to saw evidence and Ross evidence is much better. It isolates that. In the status quo, there's over or under regulation, but the CBA would be able to balance it and says it would not constrain quick, hasty action as long as that action is using the best science. Our argument is that we should constrain agency regulations if they are unscientific, which is much better now. The judicial review stuff one, all of your evidence is old. Of course, in 1996 and 1992, the courts might have been bad, but it does not assume new politicization post-2004 where Democrats and the Republicans basically thought they were either racist or socialists. Proves that politicization overdetermines agency action in the status quo. So now, judicial review is a necessary track, which is why all our evidence is much more recent. Connolly is just about Alaska Shapiro. And there's one court case about the IQR, and the last few courts are just about single regulations, but those are inevitable because it's just a hiding biz conflict. Yes, businesses might hit regulations, but those are inevitable. But it's a question of whether those regulations are good, predictable, and not oscillating. The next few cards about the oscillation stuff are all about Chevron. If we prove that's dead, then it doesn't matter which there are court cases that have disproven it, but uniqueness is on our side because all our evidence is much more recent. And I said there's uncertainty now, which proves there's either no uniqueness for the turn or you're correct about all this stuff. Okay, the econ impact, I'm not going to go for it. Complete defense, advantage. This counterplan does not do anything. One is that it does not solve the disease stuff because it's not certain. No one knows that durable fiat is real. So even if agencies decide to stick with their own regulations, no company can perceive that. And there's no announcement playing, so no one in the country knows that agencies are going to comply by it. And so everyone just thinks that the agents still think that it's going to oscillate and prove by signaling. And uncertainty will ruin the process. Mercy, diversity, innovation, uncertainty. Not uncertainty, so just take over by the next. I'll take a patent, our culture, because they're not to predict, of course. No, they do not anything. Then guesswork rules were based on a quantifiable exploitation. And spillover relies on clearness. No, for clear evidence, agency acting into the authority would have to look for actually that card is probably actually enough for select that card next. It does not solve of the AI scenario. Morale says that they mean flexible things. Technology is always changing, proven by things like AI and nanotech. So if it is true, durable field means that the agency regulation that they established will be set for the next administration for years and years to come. That's proven by COSAC. So if we set an AI regulation now by Biden, that regulation will probably do jack shit when it comes to AI in the next 30 years, which proves that they do not solve for emerging tech because those regulations are unflexible and unflinching in the face of damage technology, which means that a risk that the tech impact still exists. It also links to that benefit because it ends up in regulations. Quote, do not do the plan is not a plank because no one knows what the plan is. That's not a policy option. You wrote the counter plan, so it's wrong, dummies. The BizCon did said 1, no turns case 1, the plan is certitude. Durable field checks 3, the status quo fails because it does not protect wetlands or solve the APA advantage. Your evidence is far too old on this question. Now, framing issue is that Brandon just misheard us or just did not listen because we are not the significant nexus test. Then we did not say we fiat in, which proves that all of their links are not to us, but some complicated court case that is not about us. Now, BizCon dropped over 3% in January, should have triggered the link because at one point BizCon was low, which is the CIG evidence. So even if they win, it's recovering does not matter because the dissent should have been thumping. The small business companies of writing result. They're doing the small business companies today bring all-time low 3%. Notice a by war, Ukraine stock market volatility, increasing inflation, they're bringing underwater over the struggle with rising inflation, supply chain struggle, little of it. They're already about all this purpose, medical wage hikes, recession is inevitable. Then 12-17 inflation becomes entrenched low probability of better. What came first? A recession, suffered 40% of recession, did you stop the needful? Inflation, there was a future returning signal. Now the link turns, SQO triggers the SQO triggers the DISAD 1 by don't implement a new rule that angers farmers and businesses, so the link is inevitable to that AFB evidence. Do the plan is comparatively better because it's unambiguously protect all wetlands. This clarity is best for businesses as per the one in our link card 3. The plan was implemented in 2015 and it did go into effect at the econ experienced steady growth, which proves they can attribute to the plan in recession as well.
One of the tags of the card was like recession level. Which card was that?
The lead card.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I believe 7 times. Yes, 7 times. Probably said it a bit loudly, but whatever.
No, it's actually T.
Why did you say that? God damn it, Brandon.
I leave my presence.
Wait, did the when I read this Rosenbaum card, I believe I just floated. The only like uniqueness card was this lead card.
He did do that.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Can you read Rosenbaum, right? Small business confidence.
Yeah.
Okay. BizCom DA, Vanish Counterplan, APA Vanish.
Who would guess?
What?
Who would guess?
Yeah. You only asked 4 times, which oops.
I wonder what the order could be.
Yeah, I wonder. Okay, is everyone good? Okay. This is how it is on time frame. All of your impact evidence says that AI is decades out because it's a long-term technology, process. All right, modified evidence says that the failure to recover from COVID causes short-term deterrence failure and extinction because it causes withdrawn because the deterrence failure is direction of the in China and hospitals like Taiwan, which causes extinction quickly. Time frame matters because the app is only shuffling the detectors on the these are the non-significant nexus. This does not matter. 2AC crossing said quite clearly, even if the plan does not feel significant nexus is used, it establishes as a broader precedent and is used to uphold the rule in the future. But if they're correct about this, then the plan just couldn't happen, because if the significant nexus test is not adopted, then the new protection rule will be struck down because of the status quo of the route proposition, which limited the ability, which is currently limiting the ability of Biden to oppose a new rule. If you're correct about this, then the plan just can't happen. You should vote negative on presumption, but all of our link evidence that opposing a sweeping rule is bad. So none of this matters because it would still impact every industry, regardless of whether or not the significant nexus test. They say we dropped the business confidence was low in the past year. Wrong. The Talbot evidence says that COVID is unique, even if there was a recession during COVID. That is already unique. This argument because it's about the speed of recovery from it. Even if the fact that business confidence was low during COVID is our unique argument because that does not prove that you have to win the recession is going to happen after this order of terminal effect, because this is not just a general economic decline impact, because our card is from 2021. Now all of your uniques across the state of recession will happen in the future are really old. The 1 year Rosen evidence is wrong. It says the business confidence will be hurt in East Asia and Europe because it has localized impact. The 2 NCT and evidence is really good. Post dates their evidence says that even if a decline is localized and likely to happen in Europe and Asia, it'll be localized and will spill over to the United States, which is the threshold for our terminal impact. The Lee evidence they read is 3 months old and says that inflation is likely to happen. Our evidence all post dates it and says that that happens and inflation has been transitional. Your cards on this are just embarrassingly old and can't be the case for 2 AR. They say that Biden will implement a new rule now. This is wrong for a couple of reasons. First is the status quo rule numbers are wrong. First is even if there's a rule change, we'll drop the second go back score on the 1 hour case rate. The status quo gradualism would force Biden to respond to mass backlash from being treated in America. The rule would be gradual, and you have to go back to the drawing board dozens of times to draft a new definition that wouldn't trigger the link to the independently turns case. Even if you think we're losing the count button and just together, you can see the status quo will inevitably solve the F better. Second, declared arguments wrong. Even if they were normally correct, you should try to the magnitude of the link more than 375 entries. Entry groups that make clear that they believe that was associated their businesses that the co-act evidence the rule would effectively extend jurisdiction to cover everything and quote an infinite zero-like contract. If there was the 2015 numbers incorrect, drop that it was never fully implemented. Massive litigation backlash and that's been made implementation impossible. Even if you're correct that a new binding rule will happen now, drop the colon evidence in the 1 hour that says that the speed matters. If the rule happens, it'll be implemented gradually over a couple of years as litigation is carried out. The fact that the plan fiats rule change happening immediately means the businesses will not have enough time to adjust. The Aff regulations argument was answered about the 2015 rule. Argument was wrong. It was never fully implemented. But even if they win that it was implemented to some degree, it was implemented gradually over much litigation. The Aff is distinct and happens quickly. We've read evidence that differentiate the two of them. Advantage counterplan. It does solve the advantage because it does establish certainty. You're going for an uncarded deficit and just starting stuff. The Masora evidence is way better, and I know it's a really good correct because it's still off the Georgetown wiki. The Masora evidence is good and says that it gives them varying abilities and options to entrench regulations depending on how much they want to do, depending on what the regulation is. It's actually specific to emerging technology, and says that depending on the technology, it could be depending on the technology, it would be sufficient to preserve flexibility because if agencies anticipate that changes to technology will come in the future, then they will adopt measures in a reciprocal fashion. They're going for an uncarded deficit. We're reading evidence that is way better, but if they're correct, they link to it too because the Aff also imposes unitary standard of which means that you link to it at worst. But the link to that benefit argument is wrong if they're right about it. That you can justify the counterplan, justify the logic conditionality. But the counterplan avoids it because we fiated that the plan does not happen. Yes, we did not insert the whole plan text, but counterplans are not bills. Don't do the plan as a shorthand for the thing in the YC. Obviously. Yeah, otherwise every plan text would be 8 minutes long because you'd have to read the whole text of a ruling. But judge pick anyway, who cares? APA advantage. I am going to explicitly concede the Chevron thumper. This destroys the advantage. The GUN explicitly said in the 1 AR that the threshold for solving the F is certainty and flexible agency regulations. They have read several cards that the courts will not allow the agencies to make rules, period, because they'll won't defer to them, won't let them make rules, period, because they will decide that it's not within their jurisdiction to do so. This destroys the advantage because agency rules cannot be flexible if the courts will not let them implement them at all. Your cards are actually pretty good and say that the courts will destroy deference. This zeroes the Aff clearly because your cards say that regulations will not be implemented and that justices will inevitably constrain the flexibility, which is what you said is the key to solving the Aff. I don't need to do much else here. Even if they're correct that they establish limits on flip-flopping, does not matter because you said flexibility to some degree is key and said the justices will inevitably destroy that. And your cards are really good, so we'll concede them. Where's Bob?
Yeah, I was about to ask my verbatim and word
Yeah.
really nice stuff on my computer. So if like organized card stock that you're doing the next one.
That's a question. Version 1 or 1. Sure.
The APA advantage, the counter plan, the dissent.
You want the camera?
I'm okay.
It's just, I turned it for every zero.
It's all good. Okay, y'all good? It is try or die for Sonic for making the impact was dropped for the 2 hour because it's impossible for them to win this debate. The impact was conceded, so you know the absolute certainty that rogue technology like geoengineering, AI, and nanotech become uncontrollable and all that's on the planet. That's the best answers evidence. They've also conceded new diseases cause extinction because they are higher, they have higher transmissibility and lethality, and we've no preparedness, which is diamond evidence. You cannot win a debate without impact because it means that absent a radical change in the status quo, you know everybody is going to die. Extinction frames your ballot and outweighs all their impacts versus magnitude. There's a categorical distinction between our impact and theirs. The difference between ours and theirs is trillions of future generations and 100 billion years of human existence. I.e., people will survive from a nuclear war because they know evidence is actually kills all humanity, but they would not survive from AI or internet becoming uncontrollable, which means that our impact is infinitely more bigger than theirs. So any type of distinction is silly because the difference between the impacts is just so magnitudely different. There's a categorical distinction. Secondly, there's no uniqueness for any of their offense because you know that this species is going to die now. It's on track for a human extinction because they can see the AI stuff now, which means you should not care about the economy. Caring about time frame probability is the same thing as self-indexers on the Titanic because you know everybody's going to die if you don't vote Aff, which means that even if we're bad for the economy, the status quo is much, much worse for all of humanity. Now, their separate stuff is clever, but Westminster does not understand what sovereignty is. Sovereign does not mean that ancient economic rules, just means that they do not have deference, and that when there's ambiguity, the court does not side with them, but does not indicate the disease stuff, because sovereign just means that when there's ambiguity, they side with the agencies, but our scenarios about when the courts have the default presumption and unambiguous regulations and rules, the plan would still solve for and enforce those agencies to make scientific rules, which still solves enough of the impact. Again, there's no other defense here, no impact defense, which means the impact is so massive that you say it's just try or die, and that any risk of solving this is good enough. This actually helps the app in some capacity because it means the courts now is actually going to have power to check bad agency rules, and it gives them judicial review, which is an offense for us because it means that a science presumption could be good in upholding the APA without works. It's still a reason why the plan could solve. The
disease is about uncertainty and investment.
The disease is about uncertainty and investment, not about ambiguity within several deficits, which means does not indicate it at all. The investment plan does not solve the app. They can see the certainty deficit. No word spoken on this in the 2 and R. Nobody perceives the calculus findings. They do not know what durable PL is. This is bad because investors only invest in pharma if they have confidence that the government will make scientific rules, which is the branch evidence, which is his whole job for the 2 and R, which means that there's no way the calculus solves for the pharma scenario because it's completely uncertain and no one knows, like investors, no one knows it's going to even happen because it's not publicly announced. They also concede that the plans, that the company is bad because it imposes unitary standards that cannot be evolved. This is bad for AI and tech, which require ever developing a standard that science develops. The plan standards are not unitary. They evolve as science evolves because they're based in scientific rulemaking. That's the opposite of the kind of which entrenches permanent rules that cannot be undone, which means the kind of plan is bad for AI because it means that once a rule is in place, it can never be changed, which means it will not be effective in the long run as AI can continue to develop. Also, permutation to both results, residual links, or results residual offense. That is that. First, no certification in 2 and R. You cannot vote on it. Secondly, the nucleus is heavily in the app favor. You can see the CIC evidence, which is from January 2022, not COVID, has been improperly diagnosed. It says that BISCON declined 3.6%. That's sufficient to cause their impacts. There's no threshold that they've ever clarified for how much BISCON needs to drop to cause their impacts. So when BISCON dropped 3.6%, the biggest drop in the past 10 years. It should have caused the impact fact that it did not cause total economic collapse means that there's no correlation between business confidence and the economy, which is a terminal thumper that they have not answered at all. Secondly, the Roosevelt evidence is from 1 week ago and says that Ukraine and inflation wage pressures all mean that Bitcoin is rapidly declining, and says that small business confidence is near all-time lows, which means that they're because of this side because Bitcoin is already struggling now. They're maybe new, but it does not assume recent things like Ukraine, and does not incorporate inflation. Thirdly, as they can see the recession is largely level, they can see that all they said is that RM is old. This does not matter because our making structural claim about the economy and how it is going to collapse never because of rate hikes and bubbles going to burst at some time because of what happened in COVID and how they lowered interest rates so low that the lead up is that at some point they're going to have to raise interest rates, which will collapse the entire economy at least up to some capacity. And this had last one going towards a link turn, which should at least mitigate the link, if not make offense for us. They can see that the Biden's new rule is going to be turnover for businesses. The APM has commented on it and said that it's certainly vague and confusing, which aims businesses, which means that the status quo is far more likely to trigger the link than the plan. Second, you can see the plan is much more clear and it provides clarity for businesses, which means that they would not overreact to it as they would in Biden's rule because it's very unclear. Thirdly, they can see that the USDA chart that when Obama did the rule in 2015, there was not major economic collapse, which just proves that a correlation between the plan and total economic collapse. They say speed matters. This is wholly relevant because Biden just passed notice economy, which means that companies are expecting a rule, so the plan is not a whole out of the blue. Good debate.
Hey, I got a quick question. Use my Excel doc pros. What was the first argument on the solvency deficit you made of the counterclaim? Sorry.
So it's about certainty.
I got the rest of it. I just wanted to make sure.
You good?
Yes, I will use for video. This will work on my computer.
Which one of your cards on Chevron did you already? Just want to make sure I got
The
that.
first two,
Okay,
the
yeah.
fiction one and then the one that's so whole greenhouse.
Okay, thanks.
Can you put the, just for, so I know which ones, the cards you're kind of conceding
Yeah.
on the upper level in your doc?
Yeah. Neg doc
Okay, so-
consent.